Welcome to the Seeds Storyteller Series with my brother, Kyle Gregory. Kyle, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Oh, this is going to be fun. So, for those of you that do not know Kyle yet, he is living and coming to us right now from Italy. He is an artist. He just oozes beauty, creativity, artistry, and his passion to share that, to build community, and to bring us together and have conversations about kind of the nitty gritty of life, the stuff that really matters, is what we are here to talk about. And we will be hearing a little bit of his music because we can't have a conversation with Kyle without catching a glimpse of the music. And we're just, for 45 minutes here, we're going to have a conversation that I hope inspires each and every person watching. And we invite you, as you hear Kyle's story, to lean in, find some of your story in his, and have a spring in your step at the end of this conversation that you perhaps didn't have when you started. So welcome, and thank you for joining. This is super cool, Kyle. I'm looking forward to this.
It's going to be a pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, so where in Italy are you coming to us from?
Well, I'm in a space that I know very well, especially now because I've been in this. We have a 2-bedroom apartment in Verona, Italy, which is in the north. Verona is a city of about 250,000 people. It's halfway between Milano and Venice, in just below the Alps. We thought we were only going to be here for a week, Kim and I. We came to see our daughter who lives here. Our kids grew up here. I was born in the Midwest in Bloomington, Indiana. Our kids were all born in the States, but they all grew up in Italy. And one of our daughters has moved back here. So we were coming to visit her from Beijing, where we currently live. We thought we'd be here for just a week, but because of how things unfolded with the virus, we're still here. Kim is teaching for a wonderful international school in Beijing. It's called Western Academy, and she's been doing online teaching. Sometimes probably feels like she's running on fumes a little bit, like a few other teachers in the world. But she's really tough, and she really loves her kids. And so she's still hanging in there doing online teaching from here in Verona to her students who are also spread around the world. Some of them are in Beijing, but many of them are in different cities who, unexpectedly, just like us.
Yeah. So what's life like right now this week in Verona in terms of just the feel, and are you able to leave, and health and all, just the community situation?
Well, I mean, there's a constant level of concern and anxiety about the people in our circle of concern, and their families over their health, just like for all of our listeners. I mean, that's one of the things that's really unique about this moment, is that all over the world, and I literally have friends all over the world that I'm in touch with now more than ever. But whether it's the Middle East or in Asia or in Europe or North America or wherever, we're all in the same boat. And here in Italy, however, we're a little further down the road than you folks in the States, I think, because we've been doing the physical distancing for a little bit longer. And generally speaking, the rate of infection in Italy is really declining quite a bit throughout the country. So I think there's a growing sense of optimism, and we have a few additional liberties. We're still restricted in many ways in terms of our movements, but now, which is a big deal for me, I can go outside and walk as far as I want to walk from my house, as long as I have a mask and some disinfecting gel or gloves. And because for weeks we couldn't even go outside.
Yeah.
So just to get under the sky
Yeah.
and walk around some trees feels
Yeah.
very therapeutic right now, more than ever, because we've been missing it for so long.
Oh my gosh, I'm with you. I'm so with you on the trees.
Yeah.
I try to get my feet out in the dirt and feel the sun on my skin as much as I can.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the roots of your gifts and your passion around beauty and artistry, and your just masterful jazz musician. So let's start there. Will you talk about your passion for music and the arts? And then I want to talk in a minute about how that connects to your passion for people and community. But let's start with the arts. How long have you been playing the trumpet? And
Well, I just turned, I can't believe this number. I don't really feel this old most of the time, but just a little over a month ago, I turned 58, which is just a couple years from the big 60,
yeah,
which sounds really weird. But I started playing when I was 11. So just do the math. That's
right.
47 years, right?
That's a while. That's a few days.
Yeah. And what that means is, in most of those days, we're talking about multiple hours of being alone with a trumpet in a
Yeah,
room
yeah,
practicing.
yeah.
And but the best part of being a musician is making music together with people. And I was just really fortunate to have great teachers. I mean, I learned about music from my public school. My band director in middle school, I started in 6th grade. I didn't want to be in the choir because in those days I wasn't that interested in girls. And I thought I might, didn't want to hang out with too many girls at that time.
Right.
Now I miss hanging out with girls because in the jazz world, it's too many guys, and we need more gender equity.
Yeah.
But anyway, in those days, I ended up being in the band, and that's when I discovered the trumpet. And strangely, for me, I knew by the time I was 12 what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And I've been so blessed just to be able to get to do what I fell in love with when I was 12 years old, and I still get to do that.
Well, and your this passion, which really became that clear at 12, which is so incredible, has now it's literally taken you around the world, and you've been living, as you said, in China and Italy, and raised your family in Italy. And what an incredible, wow, globetrotting with the trumpet. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, and it has, and I do feel also very fortunate, but that everyone that's listening shouldn't think of my life in terms of jet setting terms, because for
True.
musicians, to be honest, if I had enough gigs to be able to just stay and hang, more at home and be connected more with people within 20 miles of where I'm living, I'd be delighted with that many times, because it can be tiring, especially the airport time.
Yeah.
But these days, for a lot of us musicians, the global thing is driven by necessity.
Yeah.
For us to have enough work, we've had to expand. And I know quite a few jazz musicians. They live in one city, but they're regularly working internationally. They're regularly on planes and
Yeah.
going here and there, in part just to have enough work and just to stay active in their field.
Yeah. So you're saying don't romanticize the global jet
Yeah,
setting part, because there's a
yeah,
cost to that. Yeah. Thank
right.
you.
Yeah. Like everything, it's a trade-off.
Yeah. So at what point did the dots of your passion as an artist for the trumpet at 12 really become super tied to your love and passion for people and building community and these conversations?
Yeah. Well, that's taken time.
Right.
That's a longer story. I think a real turning point for me, because when I was 12, the way I was thinking was, I want to be a rich and famous trumpet player.
Right.
And I didn't really understand that's already hardly possible.
Right.
um, but I think as my spiritual journey unfolded,
Mm.
where also my thoughts about my life got to be a little bit bigger than just being centered on myself,
Yeah.
and I, began to grow in awareness of other possibilities of living a bigger life that's about being a channel of good things to others, which is the best way possible to participate in all the best things that life has to bring. That unfolded throughout my college years, and then also as my profession developed, both as a teacher, because I went down the road of becoming a professor. So I got my doctorate in music, so that I could teach college students jazz. And then for most of these last 30 years, I've been very active as a teacher, in addition to being active as a performer. And so I'm still active in both of those, but now the additional role I have, because I'm not teaching full time at an institution right now, because I'm really invested in this nonprofit that we've created over the last 10 years with fellow artists and art lovers. This association is called Nexus. So in addition to playing jazz and also classical music, I'm involved through Nexus in sharing the arts with people all
Mm.
around the world, and involved in events all around the world where we're connecting art to life.
I love that. And I love this bit that was on the part of the Nexus story. I'm going to read it if I may, because I think it's
Yeah.
so perfect for right now. And by the way, the info for Nexus is in the write-up below, so make sure you check that out, y'all. So it says, about 10 years ago, a small group of friends recognized the need in their own lives to slow down and process life experiences. Like many people, we often felt overwhelmed by the urgent demands and found little space for reflection. We read books and watched films together, discovering that the arts can be an inspiring tool to help us reflect on our own stories. As things grew, we began hosting events built around shared encounters with the arts. A key feature was simply bringing people together. So we decided to call this endeavor Nexus. Love that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, in the website, which is in the write-up, y'all, so check it out. I love it's like a feast of art, books, musics, films, kind of resources for fueling that and having conversations. Because that's the thing, right? It's not just about absorbing it on our own, although that's part of it. It's you love having this kind of interior journey and shared life experience and shared stories with others. Yes?
Yeah, and that's also grown obviously out of my own personal journey, because
Yeah.
actually the way I'm wired, I'm I my favorite thing is to hang with my wife, but apart from that, and my kids, but apart from that,
Yeah.
I can be really happy just to be alone with a book, and with my thoughts, and by my personality and just the way I'm constructed as a kind of introvert, I can be pretty content if I have a free day just to be by myself.
Yeah.
But it's been a part of my learning, just as a human being, to discover how much to really live deeply, how much we need one another. And the arts are just such a beautiful tool for sharing that journey with other people, because typically what we do also, whether it's like a conversation that I have with a friend, or a formal event that we organize through Nexus, everything happens in a spirit of mutuality and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Whenever we have a Nexus event, there's nobody that's functioning as like an expert that has all the answers, but we're all fellow learners. We're always sitting in a circle.
Yep.
And then we set up the event where we have some kind of experience of some kind of incredible piece of art, whether, like we've said, it's a film or a book or a piece of music. And then we always start with the question, what struck you?
Mm.
And then the conversation that unfolds is what nurtures us.
That's so awesome. Oh, I love that. So yeah, so folks, is that something people can engage with online, or is it always in person? Like how's that looking right now in the midst of, you know, physical
Both.
distancing and all that good stuff?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, like a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals were forced by circumstance to
Yeah,
learn more about how we can do these things online. And
right.
we've always done some of that, but also as a jazz musician, I have a really strong preference for being in the same physical space with people,
Yeah,
because I mean, as much as this is wonderful talking to you like this, but just being in the same physical space, again, it's the power, it's like the power of art, it's encounter.
yeah,
And an encounter is not just the information that gets communicated through what you say, but it's also all the nonverbal things that get communicated when you're close to somebody.
right.
And, you know, I really miss that. And so I hope that the days will be coming where we'll be able to do that again. But,
Right.
you know, our Nexus ethos is about, you know, filling up a small room with people, and sometimes filling up a room, like where we live in Beijing, we have a group of friends that we connect with for our Nexus get-togethers, and we may have, you know, 10 to 12 friends. 10 to 12 fills up our space in Beijing,
Yeah,
and we encounter something beautiful together, and then we talk about what we feel, and that unfolds into us sharing our hearts with one another and being of encouragement to one another. You know, in the end, I think the reason why people really value our events is that they just become a place where we can care for one another.
yeah,
You know, it's mostly about that love and care,
yeah.
more than that, more than the ideas.
What a great day is that going to be back in Beijing with those 10, 12 people squeezed
Yeah,
into your space.
yeah,
Wow, it's going to have an extra. Ooh,
yeah,
that's going to be a night. I just got goosebumps.
yeah.
So will you, because I love one of the things that you have talked about is in the midst of physical distancing, you are really committed yourself and sharing this message of using that time and being very, very intentional about kind of, how did you say it? Be intentional about connecting to your own inner life and sharing your inner life's journey with others. So it's kind of this, you know,
Mhm,
coming from an introvert, I love that message because
mhm,
it's not just like, you know, you're just looking to share everything with be with people all the time. It's this beautiful, like going really deep and then sharing that depth with others. So will you talk
yeah.
about how that is taking shape and forming to be even more important in the midst of this pandemic and the physical distancing, this commitment to the inner and the community?
Yeah, well, I think again, because of our common experience
Yeah.
of anxiety and loss, and I do have some friends that have just gone through some really tremendous losses, personal losses already in this time. Um, you know, I think when we've gotten together with people, for instance, when we moved here to Verona 20 years ago, we started a reading group that was simply we got a group of our Italian friends together to read books, but not because we were driven so much by our interest in literature, but the stories we read were just a means to enter into one another's stories. But it took some time for us to learn how to do that with one another. And that would be one word of encouragement I would give to all of our listeners, because I think easily we kind of disqualify ourselves from thinking we could facilitate something like that. But you don't have to be a professional artist. I think you just have to be willing to get some folks together, and then you learn together as you build trust, how to facilitate that kind of sharing, and then we've developed over the years some awareness of certain kind of, I'd say, rules of the game that we play by, so that we're sure to keep the space we're in safe for everybody. So we're not big on like trying to fix one another's problems, which is something I still struggle with as a dad of young adult children. When my kids call me and I'm right away thinking, okay, I got the answer to this. And then I am reminded again, Kyle, just shut up and listen. Okay, because probably they just want to be heard. So you learn to do that with one another, and you just have this growing trust that frees you to let the things that are inside of you be shared out in the open. And then often also people surprise themselves. It's not also about, listening to one another, but in the course of your sharing, listening to what your own heart says to you.
Yes.
But I think everything that needs to be learned can be learned just through experience. So you just get after it. You just get a small group of folks together, of friends, or they don't have to be friends. They can become friends.
Right.
But I think the common ingredient is people who are, to me, the big important value is you get folks together who are seekers.
Yeah.
And when I say seekers, I mean people who want to go deeper into reality.
Yeah.
And they could be, that's the only qualification.
Right.
And then that's the excitement of the adventure, because you go together into undiscovered inner territory.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Just on a, what's been your favorite book and favorite movie, just to share with folks that you think could be a good one to dive into that you've loved during this season?
Well, just a week ago, we organized, I wouldn't say this necessarily my favorite movie. I don't have a favorite movie. I'm all the time looking at new movies. But just over a week ago, we organized a Nexus virtual film night with a film that's nearly 50 years old.
Oh, wow.
called The Exorcist.
Wow.
And which was not my suggestion. And there was no kind of hidden agenda on my part to push things in that direction, but someone in our group really loves that movie.
Wow.
My wife and my kids were too scared to watch it.
Right.
But I had seen it before, and I was able to convince Kim. We listened to a really beautiful podcast that served as a good introduction to the film. And then we watched it together with friends who were spread around the world. We had a little conversation beforehand. Then everyone had to have their own copy of the film where they're living. Then we at that specified time, we all watched it, and then we got back on Zoom for a post-film conversation.
Very cool.
And so recently, I mean, that's a film that I'm still kind of processing.
Yeah.
But no matter what the story is that we encounter, I'm always thinking about connections between that story and my own life.
Yeah.
And and with The Exorcist, there's images there. Obviously, they're very strong, but there's also deep questions that are maybe most people have not had those extreme experiences, hopefully. Right. But there are underlying questions about reality that that film provokes.
Yeah.
And also, I happen to think that it's a really well done film. But we're going to continue doing this. The next film we're going to do this with is actually May 14th. If any of our listeners are interested in joining us,
Awesome.
they can let me know or go on the Nexus website.
Okay.
And we're going to watch a film that's quite a bit lighter called Groundhog Day.
Wow, those are two very different films.
Yeah, about being stuck in a moment, you know.
I wonder how many, who doesn't relate with that is the question now, but how people relate with it will be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. How about a book?
Well, there is a book that I widely recommend to friends, and I'm trying to get my kids to read it. I've been trying to get my kids to read it for a while. But it's a book that's not so widely known, but it's a beautiful story that's about beauty. It's a story that's it's a fictional story of a World War I veteran who's Italian. The story is called Soldier of the Great War. It's by a great American writer named Mark Halperin. And basically that whole unfolding life story was told again through the protagonist named Alessandro. He basically is walking with a young man that he meets waiting for a train. They end up missing the train. This is in 1960s outside of Rome. And they decide after they miss the train, it's the last train of the day, they're both trying to get to a village about 50 kilometers outside of Rome. And they make this wild decision to just walk there. And that walking provides Alessandro the opportunity to tell his whole life story to this young gentleman that's walking with him. And it's a treatise about deep life issues, but a lot of it's centered on the theme of beauty.
Wow. I've never read it. I'm going to now. Thank
Soldier
you.
of the Great War. Yeah.
I'll add that to the write-up too. And I want to point out, you'll see in the write-up, there's a link to some nudges for inspired action. And one of the things that I loved that Kyle kind of a nudge for inspired action was to read a great story out loud with whomever you're locked down with, or iPad virtually, and then have a conversation about this story that connects with your own life story. How cool to do that with, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, can you talk a little bit, Kyle, about in the midst of the lockdown in Verona, kind of what have been some, especially before you could get out to the trees, what have been some ways that you've been practicing kind of caring for yourself, soul care? I know contemplation and being still is central to how you roll, but what have been some things that you found helpful during these pandemic days, and some regular practices just in your life before the pandemic and the lockdown?
Yeah. Well, as a musician, we're used to spending time what's called in the woodshed, which is woodshed is just a metaphor for being alone with your instrument and practicing. So this time has been an opportunity for me to do more study. Actually, I haven't spent it too much on trumpet playing partly because all my gigs have been canceled for the foreseeable future. I had concerts I was supposed to be playing in different countries that were all canceled. And even when I don't have gigs, I still practice, but I just don't have anything that's imminent. And so I'm doing like kind of my maintenance practicing, and then my trumpet playing is part of my spiritual practice. Even my routine that I do, which is a part of just growing as a trumpet player. And this is something that I preach to my students all over the world, is that, whatever you're passionate about, that has to be foundational to your spiritual practice. Because it doesn't matter so much if it's this or that. It's a matter of why are you doing it and how are you doing it. So for me, even when I get my horn out in the beginning of the day, I start out playing really simple things. This is the way brass players, especially, we organize our practicing. It's kind of like an athlete. You start with really simple things, and then you go progressively to harder things. But for me, when I'm playing my long tones, which is the stuff that Kim has had to live with, hearing me play these long tones, which just means I hold a note for a long time, then I play another note and hold it for a long time. So it's not melodically very interesting, but that's just the price of hanging with me. You're gonna have to live with that. But
Sing with the long tones.
yeah, but for me, the long tones are for me like part of my spiritual practice, because it's about, like a form of yoga, like a form of meditation. And for me, because I'm like all the time reading and in my head so much,
Yes.
it's a really beautiful moment of peace to get away from the world of words and just play long tones on my trumpet. Actually, I would love to like convince the whole world, also because it's cheaper than going to see a psychologist, just to get more people in the world to start playing the trumpet and let long tones fix your soul, because they do a really beautiful number on you, on the inside. And then I have plenty of students to work with.
I love that. So so the lockdown hasn't impacted that at all. You just keep doing your long tones.
No,
And
but where it has, again, I think for all of us, you appreciate things when they're taken away from you. And so just the connecting with people,
yes.
the like physically connecting, and like here in Italy, this has been, I mean, not only in Italy, of course, it's been hard on people all over the world, but for Italians, physical distancing is really hard for them.
Mm.
Because we're used to like the way we do life.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that Kim and I had to learn, actually, after living so long in Italy. We moved back to Colorado Springs, in Colorado, for a period of time, in 2012. And I had to learn how to just, even in physical space, when I was talking to someone, just stand further apart, because in Italy, we're used to being really close. And I'd notice, Kim too, we'd be talking to someone, then you notice while you're talking to them, they take a step back from you. And then I would take a step forward. And then I, eventually figured it out. No,
right.
but I miss that. Just the physical.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that Kim and I are here together and we can, give each other a lot of hugs. But man, those hugs feel really important.
Yeah.
And I was fearful that we might have to separate for a period of time, because there was a possibility she was maybe going to have to go back to Beijing, and I might have had to stay here for a while.
Wow.
But fortunately, we've been able to stay together. But I really feel for those people. There's a lot of people that don't have a second person in their space.
A lot.
And just how do they live with that isolation? That's gotta be so hard.
Well, and to those listening, if that is you, our hearts and big arms of love virtually are coming towards you, because we know that is, I do have some friends that are living that way, and it's very, very hard. I know. So, well, I want to listen to a clip of one of your pieces. So that your album, Be Still and Know, by Sing Without Words, it's a new release, yes?
Yeah, I just released in the beginning of April on musical platforms all over the world, both in Europe and the United States and in Asia. And we recorded it last fall with three of my friends, Paolo Biro, Roberto Dani, and Salvatore Maiore, are three of the finest jazz musicians in, well, I was going to say in Europe, but for that matter, in the world. And it was my great fortune when we moved here for me to get to know them and to get to collaborate with them. And they're not only, musicians that I've worked with for the last 20 years, but they're also like three of my closest friends. And we've played and recorded a lot together. And when I had last fall finished doing some new composing of tunes where I took actually text from some old Hebrew poems, which are also known as the Psalms. And sometimes what I'll do for my composition process is I'll take like some text, and then even though the group is called Sing Without Words, it's kind of ironic, but I'll start with words and I'll imagine a melody to those words. So the song that we're going to hear is a melody that I imagined as I was thinking about the words from the 23rd Psalm about the good shepherd that watches over his sheep and then accompanies them into a safe green pasture where they can lay down and rest. And I think all of us are always looking for peace, but especially in these days. And those words also are words that I just kind of run through in my minds, through the day, or if I'm laying, there in bed and having difficulty getting to sleep, I'll run through those to try to calm myself. And I hope this music has that peace-giving effect for people that listen to the song.
Thank you. And so we're going to play a clip of this song that's about 9 minutes. So please, in the write-up is a link to the whole album and the whole song. So please have this be kind of an appetizer and come back for the next course and keep listening. And just as we do, because I love inviting us all to take a breath and to practice finding that place of peace and stillness, especially if your thoughts are stormy or your health is stormy or just life, the world is a stormy place right now. So as you listen to this beautiful clip of a song, Green Pastures by Sing Without Words, please breathe as deep as you can. Perhaps close your eyes and relax and let this be a feast of music. All right. that. That is amazing. Wow. Thank you. And the trumpet was you in that clip, yes?
Yeah, actually that's a relative of the trumpet that I'm
Oh, what is
playing.
it?
It's called the flugelhorn.
The flugelhorn. Wow.
So just a little mellower sound, which was the color of sound I wanted for these songs. Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. Well, as we, in a very, what a beautiful way to begin our wrap up of this conversation. Such a blessing. I cannot wait. That's gonna be our dinner music tonight, the whole album. Thank you. But Kyle and I really do, as we near the end of this conversation, we really do want to take a moment and kind of like reach our arms, our hearts, our eyes extra close to those who are listening and watching. And my invitation to you is to kind of rewind the story as if it were a film or a podcast, and you just kind of allow your imagination to roll over the stories, a thing or two that really captured your heart, that made you think, wow, what Kyle said right there is meant for me. Either I want more of that, or is an exclamation point and what's already in your life. But what I want to invite you, as you are listening to this conversation, to do is to take whatever kind of piqued your attention, whatever drew you in. And if you know what it is now, awesome. If not, allow it to come to you. But explore if there's one small step or big leap of inspired action that story of Kyle's might foster in your life, just to bring some richness, some goodness into your life right here and now, that would meet kind of your story and Kyle's story, just meeting and creating a beautiful kind of step of inspired action in your life. Because I really do believe we find our stories in each other's stories. And so I invite you to just kind of keep allowing the words to roll across your memory, and kind of keep chewing on them, and see what is meant for you. And the other thing that Kyle mentioned earlier that we really want to acknowledge is, in the midst of this conversation about beauty and art, community, conversations, we know that there is enormous pain in many people's lives in the world, physically, emotionally, spiritually, like the whole bit. If this is you, or if someone's pain in your life is kind of weighing you down, we just want to take a beat and say we are with you. If you know us and you want to reach out for just to share what's hard, ask for some prayer, ask for some support, please do. We would love that. Please don't go it alone. Please reach out to someone that you trust, especially if you're living alone, as Kyle mentioned. Find some way to connect with people that you can keep it real with, and that love you and that can support you, because these days are arduous for many. So we love you and we're with you, is what I want to say with that. So Kyle, as we wrap, what would you, one last kind of story, Kyle's story, to drop one last seed of a story with, or what would you like to leave us with, that's on your mind that you'd like to have be your last word in this conversation?
Well, I think just echoing, your wishes for our listeners. I found that life-giving conversations have been, more than any other single thing, the sources of healing and encouragement for me. So just again, repeating things we were talking about before related to what we're trying to do with Nexus. It's not important what you call it, because also it can happen very informally.
Yeah.
But I think we all need regularly, and that's, I think it's where the idea behind even these ancient ideas related to taking a break once a week to get together with folks,
Mm.
For me, it's like a lot of my friends, they're all over the place in terms of how they understand their own journeys and beliefs. Some folks that are religious, some folks that are not at all. But
Yep.
for me, when I'm having a life-giving conversation with somebody, that's like church for me.
Yeah.
And so I've just learned to be proactive
Mm.
in wherever Kim and I have lived, and we've lived in a lot of different places now. But one of the first priorities we always have, is as your life unfolds and you meet people and you cross paths with people where you just feel like you can feel like some kind of openness and heart connection. And it doesn't have to be an enormous group of people. It can be a small handful of people. But
Yeah.
we've just made it a regular practice of looking for some people that we can be connected with at a heart level so we can do life together.
Yeah.
And we even take the step of like planning that
Right.
into our life, and so with some kind of rhythm that's sustainable. And so, often for us, we've had, whether it's a book group or film group or a dinner group or a whiskey tasting group or, whatever, but there's just these people that we pay attention to who are the people that are kind of our people for this
Yeah.
season of life that we're going to do life with. And then we just prioritize, and now it can happen. It has to happen through Zoom.
Yeah.
So actually, before I was talking with you, I was just connecting with like my inner circle of old friends that go back more than 20 years,
Mm.
who are spread around the world. And we had a Zoom conversation, and we just know we have to do that regularly. We have to have that kind of conversation with one another. It becomes a way that we get out of living life superficially.
Yeah.
And we have enough trust that we can be real with each other. And then it's about, these 5 key words that we talk about all the time with Nexus. Everyone's on a journey. Space, we create this space for one another. Beauty, story, and then the key to it all is listening, which just means you kind of can still yourself and your own kind of repetitive inner monologue long enough to listen to other voices deeply. And then you find what you need is it appears.
Wow. I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, this has been a great gift. Thank you for sharing your story and giving a bit of nuggets for life, and just sharing your story has been a blessing, and your art. So thank you. And to those watching, thank you for being a part of this. Please reach out to me and Kyle, and let's keep the ripples of conversation and the interconnection, let's tighten it up as much as we can. And as we wrap, I just want to remind you, from my heart to yours, you are loved, you belong. May we claim and live as though we belong to each other. And let's stand tall together and light up the world. So thank you. Blessings on everyone, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.